Come one, come all. It's Chase Porter, and I am excited. This is the start of a new series that I'm going to be doing called Valiant Venture. I'm going to be reading through the Valiant timeline since their 2012 reboot. And today, we are starting with none other than Harbinger Vol.1 Omega Rising. You are listening to the New Age Comics Podcast. Welcome, guys. I hope you are having a very, very wonderful week. My week has been okay. I won't lie. I have had some ups and some downs this week. I don't even know where to begin. I have been tired all week. That is the case. In terms of today, I was up. Oh gosh, I don't even know if I want to get into this. I went out and had some fun last night. I went to support the homie, my friend over at the radio station, D. Wayne. He was doing an event, and so I had to go out. I had to show some love. Had to, I didn't have to do this, but I got a little drinky. I had some drinks, and that was my first mistake. I did not get home until about 1 a.m. And the thing is, on Thursdays, I do the morning shows with D. Wayne at 6 a.m. So do the math there. I wake up at 5 a.m. Not fun. Just not very fun. But I am sticking through it today. I have been quite tired. But, it is what it is. We're still doing it. We're still here doing the New Age Comics Podcast. The grind does not stop for anything. Of course, I have to give a little shout out to what I'm drinking. So this is kind of funny. You might recognize these ASMR noises. This is a shaker blender bottle. And the thing is, in the radio biz, we do this... We drink this little thing called Emerge, and it's pretty much G Fuel. And I have been sipping some Emerge literally all day. I also woke up and took some Midol with D. Wayne while we were doing the morning show. The morning show went absolutely splendid. I recorded this whole bit with my dog. It was very cute, very fun. Facebook was loving it. All of the moms and dads out there that are still on Facebook, they had a good romp, a good gaff. So... regardless, I am here. I am doing the Valiant Venture podcast. This is a new series, like I said, that I'm starting. And as the intro stated, I'm going to be reading through the whole Valiant timeline. So this series is kind of the beginning of this timeline. So for a little history, Valiant, they were a strong publisher back in the 90s. They did a lot of cool stuff. And I think they went bankrupt for some period, I think late 90s, and some stuff happened. The rights for the characters moved around, and eventually they were repurchased in 2012 and rebranded as Valiant Entertainment. This gave rise to a completely new, ongoing publication line that I am enamored with. That is really the only way I can describe this. I am pretty enamored with the Valiant timeline. I think it's so cool. It is a connected universe, just like your DC and your Marvel. And I don't know, I'm just a sucker for connected universes, man. That gives you so much lore. And we're going to get into that. There's a lot of lore in this here Volume 1 of Harbinger. Harbinger kind of started out the whole 2012 reboot. There were actually 4 titles. It was Harbinger, Bloodshot, which just recently got a movie. Go check that out. It is not half bad. It could have been better. I will maybe one day talk about that, but... Bloodshot, X-O Manowar. If you're following me on Twitter, at New Age Comics Pod, you saw that I have been purchasing some X-O Manowar and some Bloodshot. But then lastly, we got Archer and Armstrong, something I'm not familiar with. I digress. Those are going to be some of the first Valiant Venture pods that I'm doing here. But for starters, we got to do the Harbinger volume. I have actually had this trade sitting on my desk that is completely overrun by unread comic books that I have not given love to because I can't control myself. That's just how it is. I will be straight up with you guys. So, before I get into everything, I would like to throw out some plugs. I'm doing the stuff on YouTube. If you are somehow listening to me off of YouTube, go check out my YouTube channel, New Age Comics. If you would like to follow me on Twitter and see my very random and tangenty comic book tweets, go check out my Twitter at New Age Comics Pod. And that would be amazing. I would love to get your subscriptions. I would love to have your follows. I will follow you back. I will interact with you because I have nothing better to do. Let's get the ASMR Emerge Shaker Cup in there. Was that ASMR enough? Let's try again. More Slurpee. Woo! Emerge. I have emerged. We are emerging, people. Without further ado, let's get into it. Harbinger Vol.1, Omega Rising. This was written by Joshua Dysart and had pencils from Carrie Evans, Louis LaRosa, and Matthew Clark. So what Volume 1 kind of contains, it has a lot, okay? It is a lot. Basically, we follow this kid. His name is Peter Stanchek, right? He is a Psiot. What is a Psiot, you might ask? It is essentially somebody with psychic abilities. And these Psiots could probably be compared to like X-Men and mutants in the Valiant universe. They are a rare breed, and they have unkempt powers. These Psiots, they're very rare. We also meet in this book a fella by the name of Toyo Harada, who, if we're going to keep going with the X-Men comparisons here, he could be likened to a Magneto-type figure, where he is one of those villains that wants to do good, but chooses probably some of the most villainous means of accomplishing that. So, Peter, he is a young, homeless Psiot. He is just navigating the world, making it day by day, and Harada has some inkling that Peter is tied to the future and that he could one day be the Great Destroyer, the Harbinger of Doom, I suppose. And not only that, we get to see the Harbinger Foundation, which is Harada's, I guess you could say his LexCorp. And I do apologize to continuously liken this to other comic book properties. However, that's the way I can kind of think about it myself. Harada is a billionaire philanthropist, Psiot himself. But that is a brief overview. I would like to go kind of issue by issue through this book, and I'm trying out a lot of new stuff with this particular recording. I'm going to be doing brief notes. Hopefully, I have disliked maybe my in-depthness in my last few episodes. So we're trying something new. Who knows how it will go, but we are trying something new. That is all that matters. So for issue 1, I have to note this cover. This cover is phenomenal. If you are watching on YouTube, I will display the cover. It is so cool. It is so one of Peter's powers is that he essentially unwillingly kind of can read people's minds. It's almost like he can hear people's thoughts. That's sort of how I would give it. And the cover is just him completely surrounded in thought bubbles. And it's amazing. I mean, it's one of those covers that you can just look at forever. Like, because you could just keep reading and keep reading all the little things. And this is a trope throughout the book. But to get into the book, we get this, we get this cold opening. And when I say cold, I mean that in the sense that it's ill as fuck. But it's also a cold opening where we're thrown right into the middle with a young Toyo Harada. And this is a hell of a hook. I gotta say, one of my favorite parts about this book was this hook right here. Harada, he approaches this temple, and it's full of like Japanese soldiers or something, some soldiers. And with his mind control powers, he, and I quote, "protect me from yourselves." And then you can imagine the bloodbath that ensues. It is such a cool ass, badass scene. Seriously, like if you want to get hooked on a comic, open this comic. Like it's the perfect hook. It is a hell of a hook. In this temple, we meet the Bleeding Monk. As a little note, the only pretty much other Valiant thing that I've ever read, and this is what got me into Valiant, was the 2015 Ninjak series. And if you have read that too, you might know where I'm going with this. A main player throughout that series is the Undead Monk, and here we have the Bleeding Monk. And the Bleeding Monk, you can guess it, he's literally bleeding. He's just literally bleeding profusely, uncontrollably, and just still meditating. He's alive, I guess. And I thought that was very neat to kind of establish that connection. There must be something going on with monks in this Valiant U. But then we snap to Peter. Like I said, he's a drifter. He has this friend named Joe. He's a very interesting character. He is a kind of just a schizophrenic friend of Peter's, essentially. And I gotta say, the intro to Peter is amazing. There is this scene in a pharmacy where I guess Peter takes like downers, like Vicodin and Percocets to numb this like thought hearing that he does. And so he walks into this pharmacy and he's pretty much just like shut the fuck up, give me some perks and all the cash in the register and forget I ever walked in here. Oh my God. That, like, if I wasn't already hooked on this book, now I am. And I love the scene. It just shows like the ruggedness of Peter. And I think it perfectly exemplifies like the lifestyle that he is kind of forcing himself / forced to live, which is just like a cutthroat, scrape by, do what you have to do type lifestyle. We also meet his childhood friend Chris, and Peter does something quite questionable. I very, very bolded text on the questionable. I think this is a very interesting thing that he does. It's very morally ambiguous, and I think that's what's great about this book is it definitely delves into moral ambiguity. And I will just say it. He essentially uses mind control to make Chris fall in love with him, which, trust me, this isn't some sexist, like, just like, oh man, yeah, that's badass type thing. You know, they delve into the moral ambiguity of that moment. And that is something that I give infinite kudos for, because that was also a great hook on just like the stakes and like sort of just like a holy shit moment that was in this book. So Toyo, he comes to Peter in the form of a dog, which is very hero's journey, I have to say. I think in general, this book is very hero's journey, which is great. Like, I think if we're talking books that will hook you immediately, that's the way to go, is the hero's journey. It's classic, and it's just a perfect way to sort of tell this story. So this is clearly his call to adventure here. Toyo comes to him in this dog form and educates him essentially on what psiots are. And I guess there are norms, there are latents, and there are activated psiots, which normies like us, latents, people that I guess have psiot abilities that just aren't uncovered yet. And then there's activated psiots, which are very, very, very rare. And I really enjoy this kind of breakdown that they give of the power dynamics and the power, I guess, spread across the world, because it's something quantifiable. Like, okay, now I know that there are few psiots in the world, and then there's these latent psiots, and I think this does a lot for realism, which is also one of this book's strong suits. Toyo's philosophy makes him a stand-up character, I have to say. Like, he has this disdain for salafism and greed in the world, because essentially it's destroyed everything, and it has kind of set him down this path. And it, like, because of the path that we have set ourselves onto, this is also very relatable. And this has, like, obviously a bit of an environmentalist tinge to it, but it's just perfect for that villainous vibe, I have to say. And I also got to say, I was not expecting an appearance of Project Rising Spirit in this book. That happens later. And, you know, I thought that was just like a Bloodshot property, pretty much. So, you know, that's my thing. I love the connectedness. I love the connected universe. Project Rising Spirit essentially comes after Peter at one point. And you could, I don't know what you'd call them. Like, this is a very niche reference, but there's one of my favorite movies ever is Push, and there's The Division. And they're the people who hunt people with powers. They're similar to that in this book. I love this first issue. It had amazing emotional appeal for all of the characters. And yo, Toyo Harada is dope as fuck. Huge Magneto vibes. I am a huge Magneto fan. He is so cool. So I was just drooling. I was literally drooling, ruining my comics. Ruining the trade paperback that I have. And, you know, I also got to give a humongous shout out to the art. It's very detailed and has great grit. And I think that's like, Evans has amazing motion in his art as well. This issue totally hooks you. And another great dynamic in this book is that Toyo and Peter, both psiots, Toyo is a man in power, and Peter is a man with nothing. And I think that is so awesome because it shows kind of both sides of the coin for how being a Psyot in this world can turn out. You can either use your power to gain this status, or you can sort of be vilified by yourself and by the world with this power. Overall, amazing issue. Issue 2, we get another cold ass open with 10 years younger Toyo. He finds this baby Psyot, and his thing is that he essentially shows people horrible memories, like their worst memory. He makes them relive them in that moment. And I love this scene because it rolls into a bit of a origin story for Toyo, which is just great exposition that's not forced at all. And his origin story is so chilling. So he's in Japan when the bombs go off, and oh god, like, oh, it's just so crazy. Like, his Psyot powers, they protect him from the nuclear blasts, but he's with his family, his mother specifically, and she is obviously not protected at all. And oh my god, just the art in this scene with they show his mom being like just charred, and as Toyo is like running to his mother, it's just chilling. Like, the word chilling is the only way I can describe it. But we go back to Peter, and he's having this badass fight with the Project Rising Spirit soldiers. They kind of hunt him down in the first issue, and Peter and his friends, they all get swooped up in this van after this fight into the Harada organization, which is the Harbinger Foundation. And a standout scene is when Toyo, he's still in dog form, by the way, he sends all the onlookers off to bed in this just amazing scene. I am going to try and find it and put it on screen. It is just such a hilarious sequence. So good. And I love this because we're so quickly in a pit of emotional appeal for these characters already. Like, Peter is forced to abandon his friends and go to the Harbinger Foundation. They can't bring his friends with him. And it's super sad, and you feel for Peter and Joe and Chris, who now Chris has snapped out of love for Peter, which is also a very emotional scene. That is how this issue sort of ends, just with Peter being inducted, you could say, into the Harbinger Foundation. Also, another great hero's journey moment. This is definitely his, you could say, his supernatural aid / like the threshold, I would say. Maybe a little bit of both, kind of in that route. I also love how Harada, he plays such like a small but heavy role throughout the series, and it's just really great. And I also like how the issue, it gave us a moment to watch Peter unleash his power completely. And that kind of just shows the readers like what he's capable of. And as well as Harada, not only through his power usage of his Psyot abilities, but he's also able to kind of flex his tangible power and his knowledge and his ability to kind of arrange quickly and extract Peter from this situation. So it shows not only his Psyot ability, but his weight and that he can throw in the world. Issue 3, Peter, he has now made his entrance into the Harbinger Foundation, and he's just thrown headfirst into this futuristic type world of Psyots. And you have to remember that he's been homeless this whole story. So now he is seen in like a skyscraper in the top echelon. And this is a great issue where we actually meet a ton of characters that I'm actually beginning to recognize some from my passive knowledge of the Valiant universe. For instance, we get to meet Livewire here, actually, which I was just like kind of jumping up and down like, oh, hey, that's Livewire. You know what I'm saying? This continues to be a big introduction issue throughout because we meet some other Harbinger characters like Hidden Moon, he's kind of like Peter's handler, I guess you could say. His power is to like turn off your Psyot abilities, big eraser head energy for my Hero Academia fans out there. And then we also meet Ingrid, who is like the Foundation's therapist. And I like how we get a callback to that baby that I talked about in the last issue with Harada, because Peter meets that baby whose name is Darpan during his therapy session. And same thing, this is a super awesome exposition point of Peter's childhood traumas that are brought out. It's just so tasteful. I seriously can't gush over it enough. throughout this whole time, we're really brought into Peter's shoes. He's meeting all these new people, and like, so are we. And it's a lot, but that's exactly what Peter is going through. And of course, then this issue had to end in a fight, and it had to be some psyot asshole kids at the Foundation. Sort of that whole lunchroom squabble bravado that just, of course, took them over. My thoughts on this issue, it goes super hard with some of those X-Men comparisons, right? Like, this place could be very much likened to the Xavier Institute. But honestly, it's funny that X-Men comparisons have been a little played out these days, like given Umbrella Academy and maybe Doom Patrol. I haven't seen Doom Patrol, but I know it kind of has those vibes. And honestly, like, even regardless of all of that, I still just loved this, and it really set itself apart regardless in so many little tiny but awesome ways. This issue also feels like it connects so many of those like loose ends that we're reading throughout the first couple issues that you don't even realize that were there. Like, we see Peter's mind reading come back in that lunchroom scene before his fight. And Harada, he actually is talking to the bleeding monk at one point, which I wasn't going to forget that. The bleeding monk is stored away now in his tower, which is just seriously so cool. Like, he has this blood pool bath thing that, oh God, it's just amazing. And this is actually where we get some of that foreshadowing of Peter being the Great Destroyer. What I think makes this third issue really great is that it ties everything in and then it grounds everything. And it makes the readers feel really invested. Like, we have learned so much so far, already seen the characters go through a ton of shit. And like, after reading this issue, I knew that I would be buying the second trade, because that's just how invested I am. Like, as reading this issue, I was like, okay, I will be going to my LCS on the weekend and purchasing volume 2. It's one of those. Oh God, and how could I forget? At the end here, we get another character introduction, and it is the first cameo appearance of Faith, which, if you guys have maybe heard anything about the Valiant universe, you might have heard of Faith, or at least seen Faith. And I'll get more into that in issue 4. But here we see her blogging, she's flirting, and, you know, Livewire and Faith. Like, needless to say, this issue is a key issue. We roll into issue 4, and this is a huge issue. Like, because we start to see Peter, he starts to waver a lot in some of his trust and commitment to the Harada Foundation. If we're to keep the hero's journey comparisons going, this would be his trials and tribulations, I would say. And, you know, there's this one scene that's honestly just worth quoting right here. For a little context, Harada, he's attempting to shift, like, Peter's path away from being the doom of the world and the Harbinger. So he arranges for Peter's friend to get killed. You remember Joe? He arranges for him to get killed, and he has this council, and he lies to the council about the bleeding monk's wishes. He essentially says the bleeding monk wanted me to do this. For a little more context, the bleeding monk is this precog, right? A precognitive. He can see the future. That's the whole thing with him knowing that Peter's going to be the death of the world. And the bleeding monk says to Harada, "You lie in my name, Harada. Hubris has you in its clutches." Harada replies, "Not hubris, monk, compassion for a broken and lost boy." And then the monk says back, "Then it appears you even lie to yourself, Harbinger." This comic, this is some good shit. Another very notable scene is Harada. He is trying to use Peter to activate Faith's latent psionic abilities. And there's this shot of Harada demonstrating the kind of standard method. It includes like lasers like into your brain, and it shows this dude's head like straight up like liquidate. It's so crazy. Not only is this just really good, but it kind of marks the beginning for Peter heavily doubting kind of what's going on here, because it's just such a brutal scene for him to see. Peter, he reluctantly does this psiot surgery to Faith. It doesn't go well, but she survives. And I guess this becomes sort of a key moment in her origin story. More on that later. But to continue, there is a great piece, but a small piece of world building here. And it's Harada, kind of Ozymandias style. He's watching TV, and he witnesses one of his own inventions get used to like aid refugees. And this is just great detail, I would say. it really helps us learn like who Harada is and what role he plays on the Earth. Peter, he's now searching for Joe, and he finds him dead. And what's really good in this scene is the way that Peter deducts that that there has been some foul play. Calling back again to some of his passive mind reading, he notices that all of the people nearby have been like mind wiped, and clearly to cover their tracks. It would be fair to now say that we have entered the death rebirth stage of the hero's journey. This issue opens up with the bleeding monk, and I quote, "And so it begins. The Omega rises." Boom! Fucking, I am such a little hoe for those like title lines, right? Of course, there's that Family Guy joke about that. But no, seriously, I thought this was such an amazing way to kind of use the title so cleverly as dialogue. Peter, he brutally forces the information out of Ingrid, who shows up to kind of console Peter, because this is Harada's whole plan, to essentially leave Peter with nothing, and so he comes back and dedicates to the Harbinger Foundation. So he forces this information out of Ingrid, and then there is this, oh my god, guys, there's this brutal fight between him and Hidden Moon, and bro, I think he fucking kills him. I really can't tell. He is like screaming that he wants his powers back while he's like just beating him with this like pipe. And that's Hidden Moon's ability, like taking away your powers. Oh my gosh. It is just, the art in that scene is just so crazy. Peter, he is really pissed. And, understandably, obviously. And, I think during his fight with Hidden Moon, one of his arms is all floppy now. And he flies out of that building and he bursts through Harada's like penthouse. And in this just fit of psionic rage, I gotta say, this is the epitome of a final climactic boss fight, like video game style. Peter has to square off against Harada, but don't forget, there's also Livewire is one of Harada's like second in command, and then there's two other psiots there, Ion and Stronghold, which Ion controls electricity, and Stronghold actually has a cool power. He like can touch things and decay the energy in just any object, and it completely crumbles it, but then he can like shoot it out. And spoiler alert, Peter loses. Peter gets his little ass whooped, I gotta say, but honestly, he gives everybody a fucking run for their money. And, he fucks up Stronghold, he gets fucked up by Ion, and Harada, he like picks him up by the neck, and he's like floating up into the sky, just super badass, super cinematic. And then there's another line that I gotta say. Harada gives him, "Understand, I am the Omega Peter, the Paragon, the true Harbinger, and you, destined to serve or die." Like, if for any reason you decide to pick up this trait, it should be for the fact of Harada's dialogue. Like, oh my god, he is just the coolest character. But then, of course, comes in Livewire and just saves Peter's ass, saying something that's also pretty notable. She says, "Live, Stanchek. You're the only one who can challenge Harada." Which, like, huh? Wait, hold on. What's going on here? And this is what I'm saying. Like, how could you not want to keep reading this series? Like, this whole book, Livewire has been Harada's, number 2. So that scene was just kind of out of nowhere and really unexpected. And I won't lie, this book ends somewhat abruptly, but not as like a low note at all. Stronghold essentially explodes with all this energy because he gets trapped under so much debris he has to start decaying it. And when he does, this kicks Peter off the building. But then our favorite heroine, Faith, with her new powers, thanks to Peter, comes and saves Peter's ass again. Livewire doesn't completely actually break from Harada afterwards. She kind of accepts the punishment, but Harada pretty much says, like, "You have broken my trust in you, but I will find Peter." Like, he is dedicated, full Magneto. Like, he is never wavering in his abilities and in his mission. Okay, and then if there's one thing that you guys know about me at this point, I love a cliffhanger ending. Even though sometimes the last page doesn't count, This issue, issue 5, has a hell of a last page. We get a slow pan over to the pedestal that the bleeding monk at the Harbinger Foundation is on. The monk is not there, just a pool of blood. And now the monk is walking the streets of New York. What? Like, like, if I wasn't already gonna buy the second volume, like, I would have to just for this page alone. Such a great ending to the first volume. So, to give some of my overall thoughts, I thought this book was great. Point blank, period. Like, if it wasn't already obvious, I was loving this book throughout, but it bears repeating. This is definitely a classic hero's journey tale, but with an extremely rugged spin on it. And the thing that I love about Valiant is that they can capture this feeling of a connected universe and a solo secluded indie title kind of all at the same time. It feels like you're reading if Marvel and Image had a baby. Like, we meet so many new characters and we establish so many world dynamics. And like, I'm going to stick around now because I want to see more of it. But at the same time, it also never loses track of the fact that the story is about Peter. And it feels like one of those, fucked up superhero books, which, hey, I am here for. And even if there is a bit of a connection between the X-Men here, I think this book does so much to actually set itself apart. Not only, obviously, that mutants and psiots are completely different, but in no way do they, like, copy the team dynamic or anything, or even, even the general feel of an X-Men comic. You don't feel like you're watching over the, unequivocal heroes that can never do wrong in this book. Like, from the jump, we know Peter, and we know that he is making very questionable decisions. And Harada, who's basically Magneto mixed with Lex Luthor, and that's just like the combo that I didn't know I needed. Which then, to harp on the supporting cast a little bit more, Faith and Livewire, even though they, might play minimal roles throughout this book, they still contribute like super greatly to the story and to the world. And this is what I mean by Valiant's world building is just so unique and so refreshing. This is definitely one of those page turners that you're just gonna, not want to put down. You're gonna totally forget to do your homework or do X, Y, and Z thing you need to do. You're not gonna eat. You're gonna stink because you're not showering because you just want to finish this book. Like, I had to go get the second volume stat. Like, seriously, I have the second volume at home. I'm not even kidding. But the thing is, I held off from reading it until I got this review out. The next volume is titled Harbinger Renegades. So I think that ought to be interesting. It's definitely gonna, like, the word renegade, I think, is gonna be heavily the theme. Peter is now going to be a renegade. He's going to be flying against the face of Harada, probably fighting Harada, which, oh my god, like, geez, I can't wait. I cannot wait. Overall, with my overalls, I couldn't recommend this book enough. To Valiant fans and to not Valiant fans and to comic fans and to not comic fans. Like, this book is just all around awesome. And hey, the rumor is, I think it's more or less a rumor. The rumor is that there is going to be a Harbinger movie that I think is going into production here soon. Sort of, off of that Bloodshot movie, which, is pretty good. And it looks like they're building a VCU, if you will, a Valiant Cinematic Universe. Unfortunately, I'm gonna torture myself, and I'm actually not gonna read Volume 2 right away. I think I'm gonna either jump into X-O Manowar Volume 1 or Bloodshot Volume 1. And I kind of sort of haven't made my mind up yet, so hey, if you're listening, I would love to hear what you guys might prefer, what you think I should go for first, because I'm seriously torn. I have the, if you follow me on Twitter, you would see this. I have the Deluxe Edition Volume 1 of X-O Manowar, and then I have actually the, I think is it the Deluxe? It's like they reprinted about the first 14 issues of that first Bloodshot series when the movie came out. I don't know if they're calling it the Deluxe Edition. I think it might be called like the Complete Edition or something, but I have both of those at home, so I have a lot of comics to read. So yeah, let me know what you guys would want. But honestly, enough out of me. Thank you guys so much for listening. It means the world. And this is my first and hopefully not my last episode of the Valiant venture. So, here's to many more. All right, guys, take care and have a wonderful week. And hey, I gotta say it. Stay valiant.